On today's show, how will James Harden do in his first full season as a Clipper? What can we expect? That on today's Locked On Off-Season Clippers.
You are Locked On Clippers, your daily Los Angeles Clippers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, sir. You were locking in with the Clips. Thank you for making Locked On Clippers the first listen of your day, your team every day. I'm your host, Darian Vaziri, born and raised in LA and going into my 20th season as a Clipper fan. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Dime Dropper Pod and subscribe to my own YouTube channel, Dime Dropper, for even more LA Clipper, LA sports, and NBA content. And Locked On Clippers is free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, where I want you to let me know your stat projections and just season projections for James Harden in this first full season as an LA Clipper. Of course, he did basically play the whole season last year, but he did not get a full training camp, which we'll talk about in this episode. And he is now the official second option, no Paul George. And this is year 16 for James Harden. So we're going to be previewing that on today's episode. And before we get going, this episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is the best place to get great deals on tickets last minute. All you got to do is download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. All right, ladies and gentlemen, as I warned you, you would not see the background that you are normally used to seeing if you're watching on the YouTube side. I am officially in London filming this episode from our Airbnb. As you can see, the setup is weird. I'm looking a bunch of different directions, so the audio might sound a little different. I'm not using my mic. The only thing I have is my computer and my webcam, and I'm using my phone for the audio. So if you want to give me feedback in the comment section about how it sounds, how it looks, please let me know. I'm trying my best out here to give you guys the content. And today's content is going to be about James Harden. So let's talk about it. First full season as a Clipper. Last year he comes after the first couple of games. He plays 72 games as a Clipper, which is a lot. You love to see that kind of availability. But this is going to be different. And I wanted to make this point right away, is that James Harden having a full training camp as a Clipper, that is major. That gives them the ability to kind of settle in. Last year he was accusing Daryl Morey of being a liar, and he was trying his hardest to get moved, and the Clippers were figuring out, do we have enough? Do we need more? Do we need to go after James Harden? Do we just ride with the vibes of Westbrook and Bones Highland? And ultimately, they went with James Harden because Lawrence Frank really just didn't trust Russell Westbrook as the starting point guard. So that brought James Harden. He had a very good season. Playoffs was very solid. Arguably our best player. And the rest is history. We lost in the first round because we didn't have Kawhi. This season will be different for him. The fact that he gets to be in training camp, which is good for him to be more integrated in what the team wants, but also for the rest of the team to familiarize themselves with him, because he's going to have the ball in his hands the most. Whatever team James Harden goes to, he always has the ball in his hands the most, which, I'll let you guys debate in the comments whether you like that or not. I think if you want to win a championship, I don't think it's the move. As great of a playmaker as he is, I think it can become so James Harden-centric and you become so reliant on his shot creation that I think at times it stagnates the offense. And when he does not have it going, the possessions can be very stagnant and a lot of him dribbling. But the fact of the matter is, James Harden-led offenses always have good offensive ratings. And he's one of the best shot creators that the game has ever seen, not just this era. He is, when you talk about creating shots for a team, he's up there with anyone. And I think the main pro, besides what I've already mentioned about him being at training camp, is Ivica Zubac and his pick and roll chemistry. We started to see that as the season progressed. He and Zoo starting to build in their trust and chemistry with one another. Where does Zoo like the ball? And Zoo playing with the pick and roll threat that he just has not played with in his career. You know what I mean? He didn't really play much for the Lakers when they had LeBron. And he only shared a team with LeBron for about half a season. Then he got traded to us. And we never have had a guy with that level of pick and roll mastery. It goes back to when Russell Westbrook stands were talking about Zubats and having bad hands and, you can't catch the ball and this and that. To that I say, yeah, Zoo doesn't have the best hands. He doesn't have Pau Gasol hands per se. But he doesn't have terrible hands in my opinion. And Russ has a tendency of putting a lot of pace on his passes, a lot of velocity. And those can be tougher to catch, especially if you're fizzing the ball to a guy from 6 feet away. I think Russ is amazing at the bullet passes that get to the receiver in no time. Maybe LeBron and Magic are like two of the only other ones I could take over Russ in that respect. But James Harden's interior passing, in my opinion, is just crisper. It's a little more touch on those passes to get them to the receiver nicer and softly with less power. And the main thing about James Harden, what he opens up relative to Russell Westbrook, is that his jumper is so good that you have to go over the screen, which now allows a 2-on-1 situation. And James is so good at reading that and that pocket pass. I mean, he and CP3, two of the best I've ever seen, maybe the two best. LeBron James also fantastic as well. But when I think pocket passes and pick and roll, James Harden and Chris Paul are at the top of my list. And we've been fortunate enough to have them both as Clippers, even though I will say, and I'm going to be honest with my listeners, I'm not a huge fan of their style of play. When I was younger, I appreciated Chris Paul and I mimicked him. And then I saw myself becoming a ball-dominant stat chaser in like rec leagues type of deal. And so I kind of had to reflect on myself and say like, okay, I think I'm the best passer on every court I play for the most part. Even though, when it gets to higher levels, I didn't think I was the best player. But I always thought I was the best passer and one of the better ball handlers. But I figured that I was getting too, reliant on or getting to have a fetish to create every shot down the floor. And I think that's where James Harden and Chris Paul can sometimes be detrimental to themselves, not wanting to take a step back, play off the ball a bit. And, people always, like last year, for example, they talked about James Harden taking a step back with his scoring, with his shot attempts. But I don't think that bothers James Harden at this point. I think as long as he has the ball in his hands and can create, he likes doing that. I don't think James Harden necessarily fiends scoring 30 anymore, and he's told us that many times, but he wants the ball. He wants to be the system, and I can tell you that he did not feel like he was being maximized in those first couple of games when he first arrived. This season, there will be no complications. You'll have the training camp to dedicate it around a James Harden and Kawhi Leonard team. So overall, I feel as though with the training camp and James Harden having that, I think it's just going to help the entire team. But more importantly, I think if it's a Zubats and his pick and roll chemistry will be even better. And hopefully we can get James Harden to maximize Mo Bamba off the bench as well. But coming up, going to be talking about the aggression increase that has to take place with James Harden. And I think I'm looking forward to it. A lot of people should be, especially if you're a James Harden fan. Going to talk about what that means coming up. I got to tell you a little something about eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP, like James Harden was in 2018, and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Thank you for making Locked On Clippers your first listen of the day. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On NBA podcast. There is no offseason in the NBA, and Locked On NBA provides daily basketball analysis from national and local experts in 30 minutes or less. No one keeps you as informed and entertained as Locked On NBA. Available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. All right, so James Harden. When we take a look at his numbers last year, 17 points, 5 rebounds, 8.5 assists. Really solid, right? A steal a game to go with it. And if you round up, a block a game as well. So, you don't think of James Harden on the defensive end, but a steal and a block a game, you'll take that. Efficiency, not too great. It was really good at one point, but then he had that skid, after the All-Star break and in March where he was playing a lot of minutes. He didn't play more minutes than last season or 2023 season. So let's see. It was actually, it's crazy. It was actually his least amount of minutes since 2012. But it felt like he was playing so much. I think what stood out is that you had Russell Westbrook coming off the bench, and you were like, if James Harden's playing 34 minutes, what's the point? But, that's around where he's played his entire career, and it's a little bit less, if anything, because he's older. So, I don't know. It's like, is James Harden fine playing those minutes? Does he mind it? I don't think he does. But I would like to see him maybe get a little bit... See, you would think you'd like to see him get a little bit less because we, don't want to overwork him. But we don't have Paul George or Westbrook. So James Harden's going to be asked to do more, not less. So he's probably going to play around the same amount of minutes. I can't lie. But without Paul George, it forces James to have to be that second option, clear cut, which means that there's no deferring. There's no, let's see, I want Paul George to get going. I want to get Kawhi his shots. Now James has to be more of a scorer, which I personally don't think he minds at all. He averaged 11 shot attempts last season. I think he can easily get it up to 15. And by the way, I mentioned his efficiency without even saying it, so apologies for that. 43% from the field, which is actually worse than 2023, but better than 2022. And then three-point shooting, 38%. For a while, he was shooting his career high from three, but it didn't end that way. Let's see what his career high season from three was. 2012, wow, 39%. But how about this? His next two highest three-point shooting seasons percentage-wise are the last two seasons of his career. 38.5 in 2023 with Philly, and then 38 with us. So, that's fantastic. And then this free throw shooting, he's awesome, 88%. So, James is going to have to be more aggressive this year. He's going to have to look for his shot more. I think he should take 15 shots a game. We're going to need it. I just hope that the process isn't super stagnant and ball pounding with him shooting 15 shots. I hope he can get to his chicken, easier. And one thing I liked seeing from James since he's left D'Antoni in Brooklyn is his willingness to take the mid-range again. I hated one of the biggest reasons I became like a Harden hater to a degree, besides like D'Antoni and stuff and the foul baiting, is he neglected a whole spot of the floor for so many years with D'Antoni. It was just floaters, layups, and step back threes. And I just don't think that that's a formula to win a championship as a number one option. I don't think you can neglect parts of the floor like that. And, everyone can say it almost got him the chip in 2018, but my pushback would be they were up by 15 points in Game 7, even without Chris Paul, and they had no plan B to their drive and kick threes not falling. They had none. And everybody wants to blame the refs and the fact that CP3 didn't play, and those are valid reasons, especially the Chris Paul thing. But, if James Harden maybe had a little bit more of a diverse shot profile, maybe things could have changed a little bit that game. But I like that he was getting to it a little more last season. He always, when he does get to the mid-range, it's always that step back. He gets a little stiff arm in there and creates some space. And you know what? You would think James Harden has no mid-range based on, years from 2016, 17, I guess, all the way to like 2021. But he does. And if you go back to watch his old school tape, and I say old school, I mean like 2015 and prior, or 2016 and prior, he did. He literally hit a game-winning mid-range in the 2016 playoffs against the Warriors in that one game that they won. And by the way, I didn't do research on that before the game. I remember it. The funny part is like a lot of the Harden fans can't stand my guts because I didn't want him to come to the Clippers, and I wasn't the biggest fan of his game to say the least. But I have watched every playoff game he's ever played. So you can say whatever you want about my opinion of him, but I'm informed in my eyes. First game was against the Lakers in 2010. 1-8 OKC, and then obviously last playoff game was with us, and I remember everything in between. I also remember an 18-foot game winner he hit against the Dallas Mavericks in Game 3, I believe, in the 2015 first round. So James Harden has hit game-winning mid-ranges in the playoffs, but we just forgot because he didn't shoot it for so many years. So it was great to see him kind of get back to that. He's going to need to, because in drop coverage, that shot will always be there for him. Always. And the thing about James is he can't quite stop on a dime and pull from mid-range. He only seems to stop on a dime from three with a running start, like in transition. But when he's on the move, going downhill, he kind of needs to set his feet. And there's a lot of guys that need to do that. Like Chris Paul, he always set his feet going to his left. He could not pull up on a dime going to his left. And on the going to his right, CP3 wouldn't set his feet going to his right. He would fall away and square his shoulders to the basket, and that was his signature. So he could stop on a dime, and as he was in the air, he would square. But like a Paul George, I would say Paul George, but Paul George doesn't take that many pull-up mid-ranges for me. But like Kawhi, he has the pull-up going both ways on a dime. Like 1, 2, boom, just rise, not set, take a sec, make sure you're planted that. LeBron is the same way too. Going to his left, he kind of used to have a stop on a dime, but now he always comes to a full stop. And going to his right, absolutely not. He doesn't even take it. So that's a big thing for me in terms of when we're talking one-on-one bag, is stopping on a dime without having to like completely set your feet. But the mid-range will be there for James. He's gonna have to take it, and then also the floater, right? That's something that we saw last season where he literally had the most money floater in Houston. It was like ridiculous. Like it was a layup essentially. And he started getting kind of broke with it last couple of years, but then we saw that flash in game 4 against the Mavs where he was just completely cooking him with it. And I hope that can translate into next season, because here's my official stat projection for James and what I think we're going to need from him. 20 points flat, I think 20 points. I think he can average that. Just 3 points increase, especially if you give him 4 more shots a game. 20 points, same amount of rebounds, 5 rebounds. Let's go with 9 assists. He averaged 8.5, so you can round it up to 9, but let's go with like 9.2 assists. And then 43%, let's go 44% shooting. I want to be more generous. 44% shooting, 38% from 3, and 89 from the line. Can we get 60-plus games, though? Can we get 65-plus again? That'll be a question. I really hope we do, because if we don't, we're going to be in really big trouble. And we're going to need James Harden more than ever before, not just when he's on the court to be aggressive, but we're going to need him playing a lot, because without him, it's really Kawhi and a bunch of guys that aren't very good at creating shots, which brings KPJ or Bones into the mix. And I don't know what's going to happen with Bones, but KPJ, he's never even had the pressure to perform on a winning team. So we'll see. For all those people that are going crazy about what he did in Houston, he averaged 20 points on a terrible team. So this is totally different, playing with guys like Kawhi, with James Harden, who are trying to get a ring. I mean, Kawhi Leonard, obviously, he's already got 2 rings, but that brings me to my next subject. James Harden. He needs one thing to complete his career. Going to be talking about how he can get that and what that means coming up. I got to tell you a little something about Game Time. Game Time is the best place to get great deals last minute on tickets for any type of sporting event, whether it be baseball, theater, music, whatever it may be. And Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I need to use Game Time for the next Dodger game I go to. I know I've been saying that on these ads, but I just haven't been able to go to a Dodger game. So when I do, Game Time will be the move. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. So that's 2 N's. Terms apply. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right. So, James Harden, this is year 16 for the beard. He doesn't have a ring. That is the one thing missing from his career. He's got an MVP. Arguably should have had more in 2015, 2017, and 2019. He has had some of the most incredible regular seasons that the game has ever seen. He averaged 36 points a game. I didn't think I would see somebody average more points than Kobe, but I should have. I was naive because the way we're scoring more and more these days in the NBA, I should have expected that. But it's not easy to do. Kobe, James Harden, Michael Jordan have the 3 highest scoring seasons since Wilt Chamberlain. 36 points a game. So he's done that. He's led the league in assists. He's led the league in points. He's gotten first team All-NBA a bunch of times. You know, the guy has an incredible resume. He's already top 75, soon to be a Hall of Famer. But there's one big reason why a lot of people just don't give James Harden the respect that you might think he deserves. He hasn't won a ring. And we can go on and on about why. Whether you believe it's all external factors, whether you believe James Harden wasn't good enough as a number 1 option, whether you believe James Harden just hasn't been good enough any option that he's been. Because if you go back to OKC in 2012, he didn't show up in that finals. He didn't show up in that finals. And then 2017, that wasn't a championship team, but he went out really sad in Game 6 without Kawhi Leonard against San Antonio. And then 2019, Game 6, no Kevin Durant. They needed to at least force a Game 7, and they didn't do that. And he had that costly inbounds turnover, the missed layup. It was just, so close yet so far. And then 2023, great chance to go to the finals last year. In the second round, up 3-2 against the Celtics, and you got nothing from him in Games 6 and 7. So the bright side is I think James Harden actually had his best postseason with us. And this year, you know what? Actually, I don't know, because in Games 4 and 1 of the Celtics series last year, James Harden was insanely good. It was just those last 2 games. And you can say similar about the last 2 games this year. Game 5, he was atrocious. Game 6, I actually don't think he was that bad. I think he was better in Game 6 than Games 2 and 3. I think his performances in Games 2 and 3 are wildly overrated. I think he legitimately had 2 great games in the playoffs. And the other ones, he was just better than Paul George. But he wasn't very good. Just because he shot decently doesn't mean it's not the end all be all. Games 2 and 3, he dribbled way too much. It was like our offense was so stagnant, partially because of him. I just don't agree with people's assessment on because he made a couple of threes in one stretch of the second quarter in Game 3. That means he had a good game. I don't think he did. I think he had 2 great games. But that doesn't really matter because we lost, and he still played better than Paul George. Which, that doesn't even matter to me either. It's like, why are we comparing who does better in a losing effort? Does it matter? It doesn't. The main reason we lost is because Kawhi wasn't there. And this is what it comes down to, right? James Harden has never won a ring. I have questioned his hunger in the past for a ring. In 2022, in Game 6, he literally would miss threes and turn the ball over and jog back on defense. And I was like, how can I feel sorry for this guy? And then, in Game 6 and 7 last year, he just didn't even shoot in Game 7. He was just weird. It's like I question his hunger a lot for a ring. And then he constantly bounces to place. He says he only wants to win, but then it's about money. But also he's dealt with some shiesty front offices. So I don't know. I'll say this about him, though. Since he arrived in LA, he's said all the right things. He's conducted himself the right way. He's done things that seem like they are with winning in mind. He keeps saying all he wants to do is win, but a lot of guys just say that, I think James wants to win on his terms, which means playing the way he wants to, which is with the ball in his hands. And that's with the way he knows how. And I don't think it's going to happen for him personally. I'm not going to change my opinion just because he's on my team. But I think this is why he's got the best chance right now. In 2012, when he played with KD and Russ, that wasn't the James Harden that we know now. With CP3, the Golden State Warriors were a thing, and Harden was the number 1 option. And I've never been too high on Harden being the number 1 option on a championship team, even though everybody can say 2018 was right there if CP3 hadn't gotten hurt, whatever. I still think, the same way I'm talking about James Harden and the way he plays, you put the ball in his hand and it can be detrimental at times if it's not going well. Chris Paul is one of those guys that I don't think he's ever going to win a ring either because he has a lot of similar tendencies and spazzes at times because he wants to win so bad. In big moments, of course. When Harden went to Brooklyn, That was his best chance to win a ring, but obviously they got injured that first year with Kyrie Irving and himself getting hurt. And then the second year, there was the Kyrie vaccination fiasco, and he requested out before the playoffs could even start. I was thinking about it the other day. Even though Kyrie Irving had the whole vaccine situation going on, had James Harden just waited it out, they could have had KD, James Harden, and Kyrie in the playoffs again. And who knows what that could have ended up looking like just by having those three. But James wasn't looking himself that year with a hamstring. I remember he said James Harden's scary hours before the season, and then he showed up and he just didn't look himself. And KD was apparently not happy with his off season in terms of the shape that he was in. But 2023 kind of got back to the James Harden that we recognize, which brings me to Philly. He had a good chance as a second option there, but Embiid's not necessarily your most reliable number one playoff option. Whereas Kawhi Leonard is the best player that he's played with since he went to Houston. And so now he's the second option under a proven champion. What if it was the other guys holding him back? And mind you, he played for D'Antoni and Glenn Rivers, two of my least favorite coaches in the history of the game. D'Antoni's never winning anything. He's just too much of an offense merchant. And then Glenn is just Glenn. We already know how that goes. So maybe he wasn't even going to win with those teams. Maybe we should have just not even given him a chance just based off the fact that those are the coaches. But with James, he's never played with somebody like Kawhi. He's a true second option, and I'm just curious to see if you put them together in a postseason, maybe James sheds all the narratives and proves me wrong and proves everyone wrong and says, you know what, all I was missing was a real number one. All I was missing was a real number one. So who knows? But let me know what you think of my stat projection for James. This is his first full year as a Clipper, year 2 officially. Just got re-signed this summer for 2 years, $70 million. So took a very solid team-friendly deal. As a Clipper fan, I don't think you should be disappointed with James at all. I think you should be happy with him. I know there's going to be a lot more Harden jerseys this year because, people were a little hesitant at first last year. And as the season went on, I started seeing more and more. But now with our new rebrand and Paul George leaving, and a lot of people already having Kawhi jerseys, Adam Oslin said that Harden was the number 1 jersey sale in the flagship store. So, yeah, we'll see a lot more this season. What was I going to say? You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DimeDropperPod. Subscribe to my own YouTube channel, Dime Dropper, for even more LA Clipper, LA sports, and NBA content. And Locked On Clippers is free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. Give me your stat projection for James Harden. And please subscribe and hit the notification bell. Let's get up to 6K before the season begins. The age-old proverb continues. Go Clippers.